right, let's talk about process costing. If we make the same stream of things every month, maybe it doesn't make much sense to keep track of the costs by job. Maybe we can help management best by keeping track of the costs by process. So each month we can see how much we spend in the bottling process, how much we spend in the packaging process, how much we spend in the blending process. And within the area of process costing, there's two basic ways to do the work. The weighted average, which takes last year's costs, last month's costs, and averages them in with this month's costs. Or first in, first out, which preserves last month's costs and then says that we finish up last month's work with this month's costs. Well, process costing would be super easy if we finished everything every month. We just take the total costs divided by the units we finished, and that would give us our cost per unit. But we don't finish everything every month. There's some beginning inventory and there's some ending inventory every month. And we have to account for the work that we did with those units. So in this example, let's pretend there's 400 units in beginning inventory. They gave us 2,000 more units to work on, and there's 100 units in ending inventory. That means we must have transferred out 2,300 units. 2,000 plus 400 is 2,400. There's 100 left, so 2,300 moved out. Even a marketing major can do that calculation, but it takes an accountant to figure out how many dollars move on to that next process and how many dollars stay with this ending inventory. So let's pretend that last month we invested $1,100 so far in those 400 units. They gave us $11,000 in new direct materials this month, and we spent $15,820 in conversion costs. Conversion costs, remember, are factory labor plus overhead. That means we have to account for $27,920. And our formula for the amount of work that we did is work done to complete last month's units, plus units started and completed, plus units started but not completed, and that'll give us our equivalent units of production. And we'll divide our costs by how much work we did to get our cost per unit, and that's how we'll figure out how many dollars went with these 2,300 units and how many dollars are supposed to stay with these 100 units. Okay, here's that problem in another format. We had 400 units in beginning inventory. We started on 2,000 more. The units in ending inventory are 100 because we transferred out 2,300. The stuff in the beginning inventory was 40% complete as far as materials go and 20% complete as far as conversion costs goes. The 100 units at the end were 60% complete as far as materials go and 40% complete as far as conversion costs. As we said in the other screen, we had $1,100 invested in those 400 units from last month, and this month we added $11,000 in materials and $5,820 of conversion costs. Remember, conversion costs are just factory overhead and factory labor. All right, the first thing it wants us to do is prepare a report tracking the physical units. Super easy, even a marketing major could do this. Beginning inventory of 400 plus the units transferred in is 2,000, means we have to account for 2,400. 2,300 transferred out, so that means we have an ending inventory of 100. So we're in charge of 2,400 units and we can account for 2,400 units. Parts 2, 3, and 4 ask us to figure out how much work we did. Well, remember, in process costing, we look at the amount of work we did as far as materials and conversion costs go because we want to get as accurate a picture as we can of how much work we did. So in this problem, those 400 units were 40% complete as far as materials go. To finish them up, that means we had to do 60% of the work this month, 40% from last month, and 60% from this month. Doing 60% of the work on 400 units is the same as doing 240 complete units. They were 20% complete as far as conversion costs go. That means we had to do 80% of the work this month. 100% minus 20% means we had to do 80% of the work this month. Doing 80% of the work on 400 units is the same as making 320 complete units. Then in FIFO, we have to figure out how many units we started and completed. Well, if we transfer 2,300 units onto the next department, and 400 of them were leftovers, there must be 1,900 units that we started and completed this month, where we did 100% of the work this month. Part 4 wants to know the equivalent units remaining in ending work in process. Well, there's 100 units left in ending work in process, and we've done 60% of the work as far as materials go. Doing 60% of the work on 100 units is the same as doing 60 complete units. We also did 40% of the work as far as conversion costs go on those 100 units. Doing 40% of the work as far as conversion costs go on 100 units is the same as doing 40 complete units. So now we know how much work we did. We did 2,200 equivalent units worth of work as far as materials go, and 2,260 units worth of work as far as conversion costs go. Because remember our formula, the equivalent units of production is equal to work done to complete last month's units, plus units started and completed, plus units started but not completed. The next part may be the easiest part in the whole FIFO method. What's our cost per unit? Well, they gave us $11,000 in materials this month. $11,000 of direct materials divided by 2,200 equivalent units worth of work means our cost per unit as far as materials goes is $5. 15,820 in conversion costs. Remember, conversion costs are factory overhead and factory labor, divided by our equivalent units worth of work done of 2,260 means that our cost per equivalent unit for conversion costs is 7. So to make a unit this month, we spent $5 on materials and $7 on conversion costs. Now we come to the point of this whole exercise. How many dollars move on to the next process? How many stay with the ending work in process? Well, what moves on is the 1,100. That's the money we spent last month. So that's going to go on with those units that we finished up. We spent $5 per unit on direct materials. And to finish that stuff up from last month, we did 240 equivalent units worth of work. So 1,100 plus 240 times 5. To finish up as far as conversion costs go, we did 320 units worth of work. It's $7 a unit for conversion costs. So 320 times 7. Plus, we had the started and completed units. Those are the work units on which we did all the work this month, and they cost us a total of $12. So what goes on to the next process is $27,340. And what dollars stay? Well, we have 60 units worth of work as far as materials go in ending inventory. 60 units times that $5 a unit. Plus we have 40 equivalent units as far as conversion costs go. 40 times 7 means what stays is $580. So we can account for all $27,920 that we were in charge of. So back to our T accounts, we debit work in process, let's say it's bottling, and we credit work in process, let's say it's brewing, for that $27,340. That's the dollars that went with those 2,300 units. And what's left is the $580 invested in those 100 units. In FIFO, we don't have to worry about whether that's conversion costs or direct materials, because what's going to happen with that 580 is what happened with that 1100. It's all going to go on to the next process. So just like weighted average process costing, we're going to look at our work in terms of direct materials and conversion costs, and we're going to refine it by looking at equivalent units worth of work. The difference is that in the weighted average method, last month's costs get weighted in and averaged with this month's costs, where under the FIFO method, we assume that the first thing we do every month is finish up last month's work using this month's costs. And then what moves on to the next process is the dollars we invested last month in those old units, the dollars we spent to complete them as far as materials go, the dollars we spent to complete them as far as conversion costs go, and the units that we started and completed this month. And that's all there is to the first in, first out method of process costing.